Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nate Crespo, your host for today and forever, and welcome back to another episode of the Lawyers in the Making podcast, where it is my job to focus on the unique journeys to the law and law school of professionals in the legal field and law students. Let's talk about what we're doing today. Today we have another wonderful guest. She's a New York University School of Law graduate and currently works as the managing partner at AllRise Legal Counsel. She's held past positions as a consulting member at Upside and as a partner at Much Shellist. Excited to have her on the podcast today, Mrs. Leslee Cohen. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today? Before going any further, I'd like to say a quick word about the sponsor of this podcast, Rhetoric. Back in episode 25, I had the privilege of having the CEO, Luke Yingling, on the podcast, and ever since that episode, fell in love with the product. Rhetoric takes user briefs and motions and compares them against the text of opinions written by judges to identify ways to tailor their arguments to better persuade the judges handling their cases. Rhetoric's focus on persuasion and helps users find new ways to improve their odds of success through more persuasive arguments. Know more, win more. I was able to see a demo of the product, and its cutting-edge technology and fascinating features make for a product I am proud to sponsor, and further shows the new digital era the field of law has been entering thus far on my journey doing this podcast. If you decide to book a demo, let them know Nate sent you. Be sure to check them out in the show notes below or at userhetoric.com. One word, userhetoric.com. Now, back to the show.
We are great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate it so much. I'm ready to go today. But Leslee, before we get started, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I first of all, I'm going to first talk about you, that you're doing this, because I love this concept. I speak to young people I went to University of Michigan, and I'm on the, alumni. My son is there now, and I'm on active on the alumni, like the liberal arts program. And I get at least once a week some student reaches out to me and is like, I'm thinking of going to law school. What do you think? What's your experience been? So I do this all the time. I love it. I think it's so helpful. And I think you'll find my journey is so different than so many of the people you've had on before. And it's been awesome. I've been practicing now over 30 years, and I love it. I love what it's become. I love what it's, the whole transition. So as of this moment, and my plan is for the rest of my career. So I formed AllRise in 2010 with a partner, left BigLaw. He retired in 2019. It all became mine. I rebranded. We were a different firm name, like a, typical, two last names, and Chicago landscape where we're, or cityscape on our website. And I just was like, I want to change all of this. Like, I want to make, so AllRise is for startups rising. So most of our practice focuses on startups, helping them form and grow and raise money and hopefully get like that huge exit at the end. And through the rebranding, through kind of putting together like a mission statement and a vision and all of that, I've been able to create this amazing culture of lawyers who are everybody needs flex time for some reason or another. So we have some young moms, we have some older men and women who, one man, I should say, one great man, and a few older women who like did this, crazy career of 50-hour weeks for their whole career and want to stay in the game, but want to travel more, or, for whatever reason. So that's, and we're all super close. We love what we do. We have amazing clients. And we're now 8 lawyers and 2 paralegals. And we're based in Chicago, but we have lawyers all over the country. We have Denver, New York, Missouri, Des Moines. So, and I think my next hire is going to be in Texas. So that's what we're doing.
There we go. Well, Leslee, I have to say, this is absolute music to my ears right now. When you reference that you have a very unique journey, because that's what we highlight on this podcast, that there is no straight path to law school, that there is only your own unique journey. Let's go back to the wonderful year of 1989. You were at the University of Michigan, and that following year, you had ended up at NYU Law. Simply put, Leslie, why'd you go to law school?
So I was trained by my parents. So my dad was a lawyer. My brother's a lawyer. My grandpa was a lawyer. And I was trained like you have to have a profession where you'll always be able to put food on your own table. So my parents were like, you could go to med school, you could do accounting, you could go to law school, but like there has to be something where, God forbid, you're alone with your children someday. You can, even if you stop doing whatever you're doing, you can open up an office and put food on your table. So no interest in medicine, horrified at the thought of blood or anything. Um, not real good at accounting in undergrad or law school. And so that was not the path for me. So I kind of like knew I was going to law school all the way through. And my parents would actually like, this is so crazy. I remember my mom driving me to see the junior high or the middle school I was going to go to in fifth grade. And she's like, this is, Red Oak Junior High, where every grade counts toward, where you're practicing for getting into the best college, where every grade counts toward getting you into the best law school, where every grade counts toward getting you to work at the top firm. I'm like, I'm 10, like 11, whatever, So I was kind of trained that way. And then I, when I went to Michigan, sitting in, I rushed to sorority, like, oh, what do you want to do someday? I want to be a lawyer, of course. Like, that's just what I want to be. And then I went to New York when I was 14 and saw NYU Law and was like, holy shit, this is the coolest place ever on the earth. It's, in Washington Square Park. It's just, in the middle of Greenwich Village. And I made that sort of like, that's if I'm going to go to law school, that's where I'm going. And really like studied what they look for and did my whole undergraduate based on with the goal of getting into NYU Law. And then, yeah, so that's how I ended up in law school. And I was very lucky and I got in.
Well, I love to hear that. I love the story of you being 10 years old and your mom telling you that this is the track you're on. My mom tried the same thing. My brother had a basketball camp at Cornell University. I think I was probably like 13 or 14, and she's like, I didn't want to go at all because I hate long trips, and I was like, I'm not doing that. But she's like, no, I got to plant the seed. You're gonna go here one day. I did not end up going there. Sorry, mom. But let's go to NYU Law. The first year, people love it, people hate it. Some people say it's the best year of their life. How was it for you?
It was one of the worst years of my life, honestly. I hated it with a passion. I was like, how the hell did I get myself into this and never question that this was what I wanted to do? It's not like you alluded to, in your own story that you told me, like it's not you don't stand in court in a Chanel suit and argue like cool cases all day. That is not what you do. I mean, maybe very, very, very few lawyers. And the other thing for me is first year law, they teach you this new language where basically, and all of law school, there is no answer. So your life is arguing both one side or the other. And it was so frustrating to me because I'm a very black and white person and a very like, just neurotic, organized person. And I'm like, tell me the answer. Like, I just need to know the answer. Like, I don't want to hear the other side. I want like, okay, we both did it. We both made our arguments, professor. Like, what's the answer now? And there was none. And it drove me insane. And I hated it. And I actually went to therapy because of it. Because I was like, what the hell did I get myself into? And how do I get myself out of this? And I decided through therapy that I love studying political science undergrad, and I want to be a poli-sci professor, and I want to do and I always wanted international. So I was like, I want to go to the Princeton Woodrow Wilson School of Public Policy and become a poli-sci professor. And I got the application and the whole thing. And I called my parents and they were like, that's great. We're so happy for you. Good luck. You're on your own. Like financially 100% cut off on your own. So I'm like, what? And they're like, we're happy to help with law school. We're happy to help with like your housing and stuff when you're in law school. We don't believe in what you're doing. It's not a steady living. Emotionally, we've got you, financially done. So guess what I did? I stayed in law school.
So the struggles of law school, you were getting through it. How did you
Right,
overcome
right.
the neuroticism? How did you overcome the not having a straight answer? How did you get to that end where finally you're like, okay, I feel comfortable here?
So it was really a matter of taking classes that were more interesting to me. So at first year, you have no choice, but you have to take all these set classes, and they were horrible. And then for my first summer, I got what I thought was going to be the coolest job in the whole world, which was I worked at the UN. And that was like a dream too. Like I was like, okay, I decided I want to be a diplomat. And so I worked for the UN, and I was working on a particular resolution, and I got to have meetings with the ambassadors from God, England, China, Russia, um, Israel, the US. Like there were so it was, and those meetings and prepping for them was super cool. But the in between, nothing happened. Like nothing. It was so boring. So, but I got back to law school second year, and the classes got a little more interesting, and it gets much easier. So, like, because you've learned the language, like the basics. So, got much easier. I'm in New York City, met really cool people at law school. A lot of my college friends were there, so it was fine. Um, and then my next summer, I went to the federal government and had a great time in DC, but again, was like, okay, government's not for me. I got to rethink everything. And third year I had a so third year I took a class that was the first class that actually it wasn't like, oh my God, I love this, but it was the first class that I was like, okay. And it was because there were answers. And the class was securities law. And securities law is basically, so there's a code, and so let's see how to put this, very complex, but to put it in like simplified terms. So securities law means you're representing companies that are raising money. And so what you have to do is there's laws that say you have to tell any potential investor in the company. So say you have, like, now I do it with startups. In the beginning I did it on Wall Street for like $100 million raises, but like let's say now I have a client that, I spoke to someone today, and she has a really cool food company, and this hypoallergenic, what cracker or whatever. And so she needs, to expand and her operations and everything. She needs to raise $500,000. So she's required by law to tell every investor, and this is the securities laws, before you invest, there's certain things you need to know about the company. And the code tells you exactly what you have to tell the investors. And I love that because it was like definitive. And I'm not a tax person, but I've heard a lot of tax lawyers say they love that too, because there's the Internal Revenue Code, and it tells you what to do. Like, you have a question, look at code section, blah, blah, blah. Versus the rest of law, which is like, read the case law, and if the facts are similar, it could be the same outcome, but if the facts are different. So that kind of excited me for the first time. I also really didn't, contracts was the only class first year that I didn't mind. And then third year I I got a part-time job during the school year, because it actually becomes so easy, I think, the work third year. And I decided I didn't want to do what I did either my 2 summers. So I was like, I gotta figure out a fresh start. So I got a job at a small corporate firm, and I liked that too. I actually really liked it.
So I think what you're saying is so wonderful because it's something I love to highlight on this podcast, the negative and positive experiences people go through, and not negative as in bad. But I think something that's so important and that people have said on this podcast is so important is not exactly finding what you want to do, but finding out what you don't want to do and steering yourself away from those things that you most likely will not enjoy. And clearly through your experiences at the UN, at the federal government, those were things that you did not want to do. But how did you figure out what you wanted to do in terms of, I know now you do startups, mergers and acquisitions. How did you sort of come to think this is something I'd like to do?
So I'll be completely honest, and I bet you get this answer a lot. So I graduated from law school without a job, which is like unheard of at NYU. It's, top five law school. And the way that the top law schools work is your second summer, like you interview second year of law school in September, all the big firms come and interview you, and then you get a job for the following summer, and then you do a good job at the big firm, and they give you an offer for when you graduate. So I was literally like one of three people, because I didn't go that route, to graduate without a job. And so this was 1992, and there was no internet and there was no email. And so what I did was every day I got up and I went down to, this is crazy to your generation, but I would get, but I mean, it's a good, it's a, like you can use a take on this. I would get up and I would take the subway with my floppy disk that had my resume and my cover letter. And I would go down to the law school, to the job placement center. And they actually had like a photo album picture and with plastic sleeves, and anyone who was any firm that was hiring would fill out use a note card and fill it out with what they were looking for and put it in the book. And I would go down probably 3, 4 mornings a week, go to the law school, see if there was anything new, whatever it was. I just needed a job at that point. And so whatever it was, I would then go to the law library, put in my floppy disk, change my cover letter and resume as much as I could to reflect like I wanted to be an ex-lawyer my whole life. And then I print it out, get on the subway, go to the office and drop it off. So I was always, always, always the very first resume that they saw for the job. And I just so happened to have gotten a job at a security. Well, it was a firm. So Cravath, Swaine and Moore is like the the firm, like the top New York law firm. And this was three guys who had left Cravath about, I think they'd had the firm for about 10 years at that point. And they'd never hired a first year associate. They had one woman out of 40 lawyers. And they went around cherry picking like the best and brightest lawyers in New York. And the corporate partner who ran that department decided he was ready to download his brain into a first year associate. And because I had taken securities law and I had worked at this corporate firm, I somehow got that job. I mean, it came down to me and one other person. And I said, why'd you guys pick me? And they said, I mean, at that point, like no one cared if they had a woman. It wasn't, they just said, you had taken the class of what you were going to be doing, and you knew the lingo just from, all I was doing in the form was like filing and stuff. And that, that's all you can do as a law student, but like, you knew the language. And so I got that job.
So I'm assuming that's Herzog, Calamari,
Yeah.
and Gleason. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that experience. How was that for you? How were those 5 years there?
The most amazing, incredible, like I'm so grateful looking back. On one hand, the training was brutal. I worked 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. I, so David Herzog is still, I mean, he's still like my mentor, and I speak to him on a regular basis. And so he's the one who hired me, and he would, we used to call it getting zogged. He would call me down, and there'd be like a public company CEO in his office, and he'd say, my maiden name is Moss, so he'd say, Ms. Moss, like the phone would, like I'd have to click on the thing, Ms. Moss, please come to my office. And I, go downstairs like shaking, and he'd say, meet so-and-so. And it was like literally someone on the front page of the Wall Street Journal the day before. And he'd say, does Rule 144 apply to privately held companies as well? Or is it really just applicable to publicly traded companies? I mean, it was so scary. I cried in the bathroom all the time. But I got to tell you, I learned from the best lawyers out there. and I became so good at what I do, and nothing can ever replace that. Nothing. So and at the same time, like you can imagine these brilliant people, and they were really fun, and we partied as hard as we worked, and it became my family. Like I actually was married very young and got divorced because there's no room. I mean, nobody had a family, nobody could like, and that's why I ultimately left. Like it was not sustainable, but for me, but it was amazing. And it was also, given there was one other woman in the whole firm, and she was a senior equity partner. She did not want to mentor me. She had no interest in me. So really, like, and still securities law is a very male dominated field. So learning how to cope with that, how to, you know, for that not to bother me at all, which it didn't at all. And it was just an incredible. And then, as I got a little more senior, and I mean, I was flying around the world doing deals, again, deals that were, front page of the paper. And I remember one time I flew, and those were the days, those were the, crazy, crazy days. And we had a town car, we ordered dinner on the firm every night. We had a town car drive us everywhere, flew first class, like stayed at, I was filing something with the SEC, you had to file in person. And I flew in, and my hotel was the Willard in DC, which is so nice. And they're looking at me as I'm checking in. And this is like I get in because I was coming from a huge meeting in Arizona to finalize the documents. And I come in at like maybe 11 at night, and they were like looking at me like, okay, here's your key. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, you getting engaged tonight or something? I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, I had the presidential suite at the top hotel in Washington, D.C., where like heads of state stayed. And I mean, I remember I called my parents, and I'm like, there's no FaceTime. I'm like, you guys, I had like a 7 bedroom room. And then I had to get up at 7 a.m. and file with the SEC and leave and go back to Chicago or New York. So it's like a little bit wasted, but I took a bath. There was like this giant tub with like TVs. I mean, it was really cool. It was really cool.
I mean, genuinely, that's just absolutely brilliant. I love it. I love it so much. That sounds like an amazing experience. I love getting zogged. I think that's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. And it's just it further shows that these are very much top guys. They're the best in the business. And when they're putting you in the fire and the flames like that, they're doing it for a purpose. They're trying to make you grow and improve. I love that. But speaking of David Herzog, can you talk about mentorship? How important has been for your career?
It is so, so, so important. I've had mentors. I mean, I'm 56 years old. I still have mentors. Like I think, and it's with each stage of your career that you need guidance. So, when I got to, so in the beginning, it was teaching me how to be a lawyer, and all that entails. And then when I came to Motschellist, which is about 100 lawyer firm in Chicago, then it became like I want to make partner, right? So then it became a mentor in terms of, how do you market yourself internally within the firm? How do you start to bring in clients, all of that? And then when now that I have my own firm, I'm really less involved in the daily drafting of documents and much more so running the firm. So now I'm running a business, and now I need mentors who teach me, what are your financial statements supposed to look like? How often should you run them? What are they telling you? How much, marketing should you or shouldn't you do on what platforms? There's so much to running a business. So now I've mentored somewhere different. And the other thing is I give back, I mentor so many young people. And I also mentor startups through a whole bunch of different incubator and accelerator programs. A lot of whom become my client after they've gone through the program. But I give a lot of time teaching, and that's why I wanted to do this when I met you, because I feel like I'm so educated after a 30 something year career, and I have so much wisdom to share, and I just want, I want to do that.
Well, I think that's such an amazing sentiment because it just further shows how many people there truly are out there who are willing to pay it forward. So for people out there listening, literally reach out to anyone out there. I mean, that's how I get these guests on the podcast. I just simply reach out to them. I'm not scared to send out a message. I will literally send out a message to everyone. But these people are willing to speak, they're willing to give their wisdom, willing to give their experiences and mentor you. So I think that's just an amazing thing to say, Leslie, because it really just opens up the world for people in terms of opportunities and in terms of different journeys and pathways they could possibly go down. But I want to talk about your time at Muchellus. Now, you said you wanted to get on that partner track, and you did become a partner. What advice would you have to people in terms of marketing yourself internally, going up that totem pole, getting to that partner?
So, I think the most important thing is, I mean, all those things, marketing yourself internally, like you said. So, really, like, the other partners are going to vote on you becoming partner. So all of a sudden your world expands as become a fifth, sixth year associate. To not only do you have to do good work and hit your hours, but you have to be a person who, at the partner level, people who there's income partners. I'm sure you've talked about this, and then there's equity partners. So this was going to become an income partner, because to be an equity partner, you had to have a huge book of business. And so it was, to become an income partner, you have to be someone who the equity partners feel they can trust their clients with, to run transactions, to interact with on a daily basis. So you really have to comport yourself as someone who they want to be able to trust in that way, because they're going to stop, presumably having to review every single thing you do and let you talk to their clients all day, and they don't want to lose those clients. So, it's forming that reputation of being a go-to person, of being, someone who, in the corporate legal world. I think one of the things I learned that was really important is, you have to stop. You kind of make this transition on the way to partnership where you're not just like doing the work and making sure it's done well. You're thinking about, who is this client? What is their business? What's keeping them up at night? You're asking them those questions. And so, for instance, I had to talk with someone, a prospective client today, and I was saying, like, we've developed three different levels of contract reviews. So if you're a startup and you're being, hired you're lucky enough to get a contract with, like, this, because this happened to one of my clients, Warner Brothers, right? If I spent 18 hours looking for, hundreds of dollars an hour, reviewing and revising a contract from Warner Brothers, and we send it back to Warner Brothers, they're going to say, no, 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 and no. And you're still going to sign it because you're lucky that you're that startup that got an opportunity like this. So why would you let your lawyer run away with the fees like that? So starting to think like that, and, getting into your clients' heads and really meeting their needs is important. And then, there's just the other, like, taking leadership roles within the firm. Huge. I became head of our women's initiative. I joined other legal organizations outside of the firm. Starting to put on a hat of, like, I want to build my own book of business, joining charitable boards and stuff. So you start to meet the people who will be able to send you business. Like, all those things are really important. And then there's the other thing is, and maybe this goes a little bit into mentorship. There was a woman I made partner, and there was a woman at the firm, and she was a really, really good lawyer and a really nice person. And she didn't make partner like one year, and when she was up for it, and she was totally shocked, and she was very upset. And little did she know, behind her back, everybody called her, like, let's say her name was Kathy. Everybody called her Crazy Kathy, because she was a sweetheart, but she, like, would go into, anyone friendly's office and yak all day and talk to them. And they were like, I don't want to be partners with someone like that. Like, I don't want her talking to my clients. She's batshit crazy. She wasn't. She just like, that's how she took her breaks. And so when it happened, I went to her, and I'm known for this in life, to my family, my kids, to my friends. Like, I'm always the one to tell the brutal, honest truth. So I went to her and I said, listen, you are such a good lawyer, and there's no reason, and you're a great person, and there's no reason, and you didn't make partner, but one, and I'm going to tell you what it is. And I told her, and I'm like, stop doing that. Stay in your office, put your head down, do your work, be nice to people, chat, but then leave. Let them do their work. Stop telling them about your boyfriends and your whatever. They don't care. And she was like, at first she was like very embarrassed and upset. And then guess what? She made partner the next year. So yeah.
So, in terms of leadership, what sort of qualities, what sort of skills do you think people out there should build in order to become a good leader and maybe one day start their own thing, just like yourself?
Um, I'll tell you, what happened with me becoming, like, starting my own thing was not in the cards at all. Wait, I'm just gonna close my drapes
Go
here so
ahead,
the
go
sun
ahead.
isn't.
37.
Okay, that should be better. Um, so I was looking for my next career opportunity, really honestly, because I wanted to be an equity partner, and you had to have a real lot of business to get there, and I didn't have any, and I didn't know how to bring that business in. The people at my firm were amazing people and lawyers, and they got most of their business from their friends from high school, college, law school, or no, mostly high school and college. So it was like one was an accountant, one was a banker, and then one was a real estate developer, and they would all feed each other business. And so I didn't have that, and a lot of women don't have that. Like, my friends were stay-at-home moms, so I just didn't know how to get there, and I didn't want to stagnate, and I was really like not sure what was my next move. And one of my partners, who's just a great, great guy, happened to walk into my office and say he was starting his own firm for his own reasons. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so, spent hours with my husband making like the plus and minus table and trying to figure it out. And I'm like, I'm gonna do it. Um, and so we started the firm, and it was really just the two of us. There was no leadership, anything. And it really wasn't until he retired that and then it, like, my practice was growing and growing, and then all of a sudden I had to be a leader, and I was really, really uncomfortable in leadership. And I actually hired an executive coach, to help me develop those skills. And I think for me, some of the difficulty was that I had always been led by people who sort of like pound you down. Not that they were bad people, but like that was their leadership style. And I'm just not like that. I will never be like that. And so what she taught me, my coach, was like, there's a lot of leadership styles, and you can lead by bringing people up, propping people up and complimenting them, and mentoring them, and like, you don't have to lead by showing them their mistakes. And the people I've hired are such incredible lawyers and people that I was like, who am I to lead them? I mean, they should be leading me. But then, she was like, they don't want to lead you. They're all flex time. They've got a lot going on in their lives, and they need a leader, and they're looking to you. So like, be a leader. And so it's taken like a practice and coaching.
So, first, I'd just like to say, I love that entangled with the leadership styles, lifting people up, rising people up, you may say. AllRise
Yeah.
Legal Counsel. I'd love that. See, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Makes my brain feel good right now. But let's talk about AllRise Legal Counsel. And I've never asked this question before on the podcast, which is very interesting. But you have wonderful employees, you work with wonderful people. What are some qualities that you look out for people that you would think, wow, this is a great candidate for the job right here?
So, I got asked that question by the candidates for the jobs. And, one of the things I say is, well, let's see, there's so many. I think we all really support and care about each other. Um, we've all been at a big firm. And no, we all left a big firm. We all had phenomenal training, and we left the big firm world because it's super serious. It's really buttoned up and really serious. And we all just want to practice in a place where we can be us. And I talk to my clients all day and other lawyers the same way I'm talking to you. I am not some like, well, let's look at section one. I mean, sometimes, if you're negotiating a contract, but, so they're like fun people who I want to spend time with. They're very giving to each other. That's such an important thing to me. Like, um, the way I look at the firm, one of my lawyers, her third day after I hired her, found out that her best friend was dying of cancer and she was in Florida. And she was like, I'm so sorry, but I know you just hired me and you have so much work, but I have to go. I have to go be with her for a while. And I understand that probably that means you're going to have to hire someone else. And I was like, no, no, I hired you. Go take care of your friend. And I'll pick up the slack while you're gone. I've been doing it for the last few weeks. I can do it for a few more. And when you get back, we'll get started. And what that engendered is like now my mom happens to be really sick. And guess who's always there for me with like, no, you don't have to, like, I got you, and we all do that for each other. One of my newer lawyers who just came from a big firm, she's like, I want to take a vacation this week. I'll take my laptop. Don't worry. I'm like, you're not taking your laptop on vacation. But they're all people who have that work ethic, who they have to be self-starters because my model is like, I introduce you to a relationship with a client. I bring in all the business pretty much. So I will bring in a client and it's, and then I will tell them all about like, oh, you're going to be working with our lawyer, Sarah. She's incredible. This is why, this is what she brings to the table. And then I'll make that introduction. And then that's kind of like, Sarah, you own that relationship now. And if you need me, which that's what I do pretty much all day now, is like field questions from my lawyers where it's like, this is kind of a sticky thing. I'm not sure about this. Can you help weigh in? But I need people who are not scared of their own shadow and are willing to, kind of make a decision, give it, stand behind their advice. And sometimes like, even though everyone's flex time, like when we're closing, we do a lot of mergers and acquisitions work. And when you're closing a deal, like the week of the closing, you cannot be part-time. I mean, you're just needed all the time. And I went through that at Mutualist. When I had my first son, they gave me 3 days, which was unheard of and phenomenal. And that's where I came up with my model, by the way. They gave me 3 days a week in the office. And when I had my second son, it was 2 days in the office, 1 day at home. But knowing that like, if there was a need, which there was sometimes for sure, I'm gonna find help and for my kids, and I'm gonna be there for you. Because in the end, it's about like making the bottom line work. So you're running a business.
Yeah, I think there's so many important sentiments you're talking about here, specifically in a more broader topic, sort of company culture, the way that the company works. Your company culture is a lot more fun, a little more laid back, where is, BigLaw is much more serious. People are talking more professional. But I think it just goes further to that further message of, finding yourself, finding where you situate in between the sort of fun and serious, and finding that company culture that fits you. And I think that's just so important to put out there into the world. But I saw something reading, about you, Leslee, and you're a growth ally and resident. Get shit done. What is that?
So there's this wonderful woman who started I mean, you're finding this through your podcast. There are so many cool people out there doing really cool stuff. And I do a ton of networking. That's how I bring in all my business. And because there's very few firms that do what we do. And so I love talking to other lawyers who do, and then also people all around the startup ecosystem. So venture capitalists, and there are all kinds of consultants who help with like your pitch deck and making your pitch and telling your story and getting you ready for investors and all that. So people are always saying, oh, you've got to meet so and so. And I go, great. I love meeting new people. So I meet this Alex Batdorf, who runs Get Shit Done. She's super cool. And she came up with the concept, and it's a networking group for in the startup world. And it's more toward actually not companies are not necessarily going to fundraise, like just helping new businesses get started and grow. And she calls it Get Shit Done. And when you join her network, she sends you this thing to put on your LinkedIn that you become like an ambassador, because you're willing to help. So I've done, a lot of speaking for the members. And again, like I always in their newsletter, I'm always like, just reach out if you have any questions, anything I can help with. I'm always happy to help.
I always love an opportunity to curse on this podcast, so thank you. I appreciate that. I curse a lot in my regular conversation, not so much in this podcast, because I'm a young guy. I don't want to ruin the image that I have, but
You're right.
I try to hold it back sometimes. But we're down to a final five question, Leslie, and the first
Okay.
of the five questions here throughout this journey of this entire podcast so far, all right now I'm at 41 episodes. I released episode 41, but I don't know what episode this is going to be right now. But throughout this whole entire journey doing this podcast, seeing the law is on the precipice of this new era. People are moving more towards technologies, AI technologies, software technologies. And sort of the question I ask here is, what is the sort of tech stack look for you, the sort of software products or the AI products, or any kind of the new age products that you're using in your practice that you would suggest to someone out there?
That's a good question. So you have to have a practice management software that, it sort of handles billing and holds all your clients' information in it. So we use Clio for that. And it's great because it also helps you, it keeps track of who's referring business to you. The end of the year for Christmas, I want to send gifts. It's able to tell me who were my top clients by revenue, who are my top referral sources. And it spits out a real lot of financial information that helps you figure out like where you should be, what marketing I'm doing is working, all that. We use like every law firm that knows what they're doing. Practicing Law Institute, PLI, has a database of documents. So you always have like good, highly vetted, like say you're doing a kind of agreement that you've never done before. You can pull those from PLI. The AI stuff, I'm still, we're learning. One of the coolest things was one of my lawyers, I always encourage them, especially the ones who are younger than I am, to like let me know when there's new stuff out there. And one of them came to me about a year ago and said, I'm really interested in ChatGPT. And she said, like, can I kind of look into it? Like, what should we watch out for? How can we use it? So we don't look like we're behind the times. And I said, yeah, like take, 10 hours and paid and do that. And then she made a presentation to the firm. And it's, so we use it. We don't use it for like contracts, but we'll use it for trying to think of an example. I was making a pitch to a client, and I had to talk about specifically our general contract review and negotiation process. And my paralegal put like I wrote something. She's like, "That's good. Here's what ChatGPT said." I'm like, "That is so much better." So that went into my presentation. So we're using it sparingly. It just makes me a little nervous. And we've developed so many good forms through the years. Oh, and that's the other thing you need is a document management system so we use, I'm not going to say the one we use honestly, because I don't love it and I don't want to promote it. And I don't also want to like say anything bad about it because I love the people behind it. It's just not that easy to use of a system, but so you can pull up, search for different documents that you've done in the past and reuse them.
Course. I mean, I'm a fan of ChatGPT. I've known about it for a really long time, ever since my senior year of high school, because I follow a lot of Sam Altman stuff. So I've been watching that for a while, and when it first came out, my freshman year of college, playing around with it was like my mind was blown. I was like, wow, this thing, it could do a lot, but there's always that nervousness. I have that nervousness as well. You don't know what's gonna come out of it. There's a lot of gray areas still going on, but time will tell, of course. Before the
And you
last,
can't be sued for malpractice. So I can.
So,
Not that I ever have been.
uh, of course, of course. But Leslie, fourth to last question, live, official, on the Lawyers in the Making podcast, Leslie Cohen, what are your book recommendations for people out there? Any of your favorites? Something you can give a gift to someone?
Oh, I wish you had prepared me beforehand. I know. The Go-Giver. Do you know about the Go-Giver?
I do not. Now I do.
Ah, it is a guide to living a life well lived, and it's it's about how giving always brings back great stuff, and it's like my guidepost.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. One of my favorite things I ever talk about in my life is that what you put out in the universe, good things, you put it out in the universe, you get it back in return in some way, shape, or form. I truly, truly believe that. I know you're shaking your head. You believe it. So
Yep.
it's such a wonderful thing. Great recommendation. Third to last question. What are the types of things that you consume on a daily basis, not food? Consume, either that be through social media, so Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Substack, YouTube. I forgot about Facebook. Facebook's on there too. There's Reddit too. I don't know if you're into that. Any podcasts you listen to that you recommend to people? What's crossing the transom of Leslie's mind on a daily basis?
Okay, so from a legal side, there's a daily newsletter called Lexology, and you choose your area of practice, and it gives you so I'm corporate insecurities, and all the memos on different relevant issues from all the big firms are published on there. So I get that every morning. I look at that every morning. And and then also from a legal perspective, there's a podcast. There's a gentleman named Steve Fretzen. His podcast is called Be That Lawyer. He helps two things. He helps lawyers who don't have their own book of business learn to figure out their own way of developing clients. And that's what really gives you the power to move up in a law firm. And then he also now has a whole bunch of different really successful lawyers, and he brings them together in a round table, kind of helping each other. And so his podcast really helps with, law firm marketing and time management, and, running a firm, building a practice, that kind of thing. So I listen to him every week. And then from I mean, fun, crazy other side fun. I love Us Weekly. I mean, doing crossword puzzles, doing Wordle, doing connections, doing
Mm.
waffle, all those. And then I guess on the in between, I'm a crazy Barry Weiss Free Press Substack person. So I read all that. I don't know how I have time to do anything given all this, but yeah, and then LinkedIn. LinkedIn's my go-to from a professional perspective, keeping track of like all my different networking.
See, I've never had anyone talk about and answer that question in a sort of perspective way. I loved it so much. Wow, I'm invigorated right now. But second to last question here. You're doing all Rise Counsel. You are also helping people out at Get Shit Done. I had to say it again. But what does an ideal Friday night and Sunday morning look for Leslie?
Oh, Friday night is like I have worked so damn hard all week. I just want like a good Tito's on the rocks, and like a really dumb TV show, like catch up on the news, either go out for dinner with friends, or just a stupid The Bachelor, like the dumbest. But I love it so much. Like my brain is so fried on Friday night. And what'd you say, Sunday?
Sunday morning.
Sunday morning. Um, so I think you'll hear this from a lot of law firm owners or higher ups. We have to be on calls all day with like prospective clients and clients all day, every day. And so Saturday and Sunday are to get the work done. Thank God it's my firm. It's a labor of love. I'm happy to do it. So, I Sunday mornings usually for that. I mean, I sleep really late. I work out. I play pickleball, and then I'm like getting ready for the week with, catching up on everything that wasn't an emergency the week before and kind of getting a grip.
Oh, I love me some pickleball, I gotta say. I've been playing I feel like I've been playing pickleball forever though. It's just getting popular now. They actually right near my house, they put in new courts, so there's all these new courts and me and my friends have went there a couple times. It's very fun. But I've been playing pickleball since like fifth grade and I'm not bad at it. I could be a lot better though. My friends are a lot better than me, I have to admit. But last question, Leslie. I do this at the end of every single
I know
episode.
I'm nervous. What is this? What is this going to be?
What are your words of wisdom for the aspiring law students, the current law students, and the legal professionals out there in the world?
Uh, my words of wisdom, this is easy for me. There's so many ways to find a good, happy, satisfying career as a lawyer. And it's doesn't have to be arguing all day. My husband actually is a litigator. So he goes to court and he's settling cases and people are yelling at each other and it's horrible. And he loves it. But I like, I always tell my clients like I make love, he makes war. Right. So there's a way to change the world. And there's a way to change the world through your career without being a public interest lawyer. So I feel like what I'm doing is adding so much good to the world by helping these startups raise money, grow, create jobs, realize their vision. It's really cool. And then also by building my own firm and creating that culture of like really happy lawyers and happy clients. And so, I think that there's so many ways, and you see how my career is like zigged and zagged and snaked, and everybody's pretty much does. So, I do think it's a really good idea if you can get a job at a top firm or with top lawyers for the first few years and get that training. That is on your resume forever, and that is in your brain forever. And I think that's super important. Like I think hanging a shingle right out of law school is a bad, bad, bad idea. Um, but I also think like you can find just because you hate first year of law school, just because you get burned out after a few years at a big firm, doesn't mean that you can't find, a practice area or and think about that too. Like, what do you want your life to look like? Like, so I've speak to a lot of young women who say, I know that when I have kids, I'm going to want to work part-time. Don't be a litigator then going to court because that doesn't work. Don't be a mergers and acquisitions lawyer because it really doesn't work like that. There are some practice areas like securities, intellectual property, estate planning that, or if you're a person who just doesn't want to ever work 60-hour weeks, there are areas of the law that are really interesting that you can make a really nice living and it doesn't have to be that crazy intense high speed.
Leslie, I couldn't agree. It's poetically said. And it just further spreads that message that there is no straight path. It's only your unique journey. There's so much variety out there with the law. There's so much diversity out there in terms of the paths that you could go on. It's just finding the one that fits you. But Leslie, that's the podcast. So thank you so much for doing this. Come on here, spreading your wisdom, spreading your experiences. And for everyone out there listening, thank you for tuning in. Check us out, lawyersinthemaking.substack.com. Lawyers in the Making, one word, substack.com. And I will see you in the next one.